Jets fall to the Browns. Thursday Night Football final score 37-20 at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, Quincy Williams. We'll hear from Anthony Becht momentarily. Felt like, again, we've been saying this for the past couple weeks now, a tale of two halves for the New York Jets. Jets fall in a 34-14 hole before halftime. Final score 37-20. The Jets had some opportunities to claw back in this game, but just felt like it was too much to overcome.
This was the highest scoring first half in the National Football League in 4 years. If you told me before this game that the Jets were going to have two takeaways in the first half, a defensive touchdown, and also Breece Hall scoring a touchdown, and the Jets had 17 points at halftime, sign me up. I thought the Jets would have been in great shape, considering this Cleveland Browns team had entered this ball game 7-1 at home, giving up 13.1 points per game. But the story of the first half was the Cleveland Browns offense. Joe Flacco, former Jets quarterback, passing for nearly 300 yards. They had more than 300 total yards of offense in that first half, and he just put on a clinic there, Quincy, with 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the score, 37-20, there's no reason you would have ever thought that would be the score in this type of game. We thought going into it was going to be a defensive battle, and that's not what it was, right? Now, granted, there were some defensive touchdowns, but overall, this was an offensive showing right here, right? The offense on the Browns put up so many points in the first half, the Jets just couldn't surmount and catch up to them. You know, I think you could probably say the turning point was probably the fumble on the kickoff, maybe, right? Because after that, the Jets just couldn't get anything going. The defense did a great job of turning it over on downs, but then again, an interception touchdown and just couldn't catch up.
Joe Flacco finishes completing 19 of his 29 passes, 309 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. The 33-game streak for the New York Jets, not allowing a 300-yard passer, is over. Joe Flacco, now 4 straight games throwing for at least 300 passing yards. AB, when you watch the first half of this game, what do you think went wrong for the Jets defense that we really haven't seen this season?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really a bunch of things kind of coming together. Number one, just the tough road it's been the last couple of weeks for this football team. The short week, you know, when you're coming off when you're coming off a high, you're trying to get yourself back, get yourself in play. Well, there really wasn't many days for them to be prepared. Really what happens is, outside of game planning and anything else, players have to come out and be great. They have to be ready. They have to have urgency. They got to play clean. If you let those other factors, turnovers, missed assignments, poor tackling, you know, not efficient on offense, not being able to answer, all those things are hard to overcome when you don't have that full weekend that you have it. But, you know, on the flip side, Cleveland was able to get it done on a short week after they had a high. So they had so much more to play for. Jets didn't. Jets were here to play a spoiler in this football game, but weren't able to overcome a lot of their mistakes in this football game. You're talking about penalties in the game offensively, setting them back. Talk about the answers that the Browns had to the issues the Jets had turnover-wise versus what the Jets did with the Cleveland Browns, who put the ball on the ground multiple times in this football game. It's just being able to stay in line with it. And Eric talked about it, 34 points in the first half. I mean, you know, that mentally, that's tough for a team to come into half. It almost sideswipes you, and you're thinking about, how did this happen? And before you know it, you just run out of time in the second half to really come back and make it close at all.
I think the stats really in the two halves are staggering. You think about Joe Flacco alone, 13 passing yards in the second half. I think what surprised all of us, and EA, we talked about this pregame a lot. David Njoku, especially with Amari Cooper out of the lineup, in the first half alone, he goes 6 catches, 134 yards, leads the Browns. It just felt like early on, especially, that the Jets defense couldn't get out of its own way, and everything was breaking the Browns' way.
Yeah, I thought the Browns beat the Jets to the punch early. You talk about Njoku. He had more than 100 yards receiving in the first quarter. On that first series, Q, they converted on what was a 3rd and 15 to the Browns tight end, and then they go down the field. They eventually cash in. The Jets had an immediate counter, which was very impressive from this offense on Breece Hall's scoring reception. But the Browns had the counter to the Jets counter. They went right down the field again and scored. And that's something we just haven't seen from this Jets defense this season. Back-to-back drives, off the bat, giving up touchdowns. And then when the Jets had an opportunity to seize momentum at 13-7, you mentioned Israel Abanaconda's kickoff fumble. The Jets defense actually turned Cleveland's offense over on downs. And then the very next possession, Trevor Siemian is intercepted on a forced throw over the middle to Garrett Wilson, of course. It's returned the other way, and you're down 13.
Exactly. I mean, just to start with AB's point, I think he had a great point. It was a short week, right? These guys are coming off a Christmas break as well, so that's a challenge, right? You have a short week, then you have Christmas. You don't really get a lot of time to game plan. So I said it last week. I didn't feel like Trevor Siemian really did a lot to help that team win. It was really like a group effort. Everybody did well around him. And so when you have a short week, coming off a week where a quarterback didn't do a lot, it makes it really challenging to then think you're going to come into a game and really be able to really put your fist up and go back and forth with Joe Flacco, who's been performing at a high level, right? So that's a tough ask of Trevor Siemian, and we saw that today. He couldn't come up for him. The guys around him couldn't come up for him. You know, I'm glad he took some of the blame with a lot of those penalties that were going on the offensive side, but it's just not really great team football there.
The Jets were penalized 12 times against this Cleveland Browns team. Anthony, going off of what Quincy was talking about, Trevor Siemian completes 32 of his 45 passes, 261 yards, a touchdown, an interception, which was a pick six. It didn't really feel like Trevor Siemian pushed the ball down the field a whole lot, though. Even late in the game, when you would think you have a chance to just put something up and try to hope someone comes down with the ball, it definitely felt like the Jets were taking the underneath route throughout the course of this game in its entirety.
Well, obviously the internal clock in the back of his mind with the great pass rushers that the Cleveland Brown had. I mean, the offensive line, especially the edges, had their problems today against Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. Those are things quarterbacks think about. And also as a play caller, the points are mounting up quick for the opposing team in the first half. How do you counter? How do you match it? You start to trend to maybe get out of what your game plan is, and you start leaning on other plays, shot plays, and that opens you up to a lot of potential disasters just because this team hasn't been really built this point in the season with the quarterback and the line movement, everything they've done to really kind of compete in an up-tempo scoring game. And that really did favor the defense of the Browns because you just saw how after the first really two series, the Jets, and they started to feel the momentum, they really took a stranglehold this game. Now, a lot of those numbers that we're seeing, even with Joe Flacco and how they stopped them in the second half, the damage was done, man. 300 yards in the first half passing is just, it's unreal. I mean, and the fact that they didn't have Amari Cooper in this football game and you only had one true weapon, obviously they have other guys. Moore played a really good game. You knew those guys were going to be up for it, but they weren't the guys you were worried about from a challenge standpoint. But Eric, you mentioned Njoku prior to the game as one of your key guys. And man, that was a difference maker. Now, not only was it different, I mean, he didn't have to play in the second half, but the damage that he did in the middle of the field and across the field and after the catch was just something that the Jets really couldn't match offensively on their side. They didn't have a player or a guy that could do that. Brees, again, counting Brees in the rush game is one thing, guys, but every week now you're trying to get, he's the guy to be the pass catcher too. Right. I mean, how much can one man do? And Garrett getting probably more than likely double teamed and trying to be taken out by their defense. There's just no other guy to help out, take the pressure off this offense, and you're just limited.
That's an outstanding point about Brees. 21 catches the last 2 weeks. He had 12 against the Commanders. He had 9 tonight.
Yeah, he led the Jets in receptions with 9. And, I saw a stat leading up into this week, like, I don't remember what the span was, maybe over the past 4 weeks. Brees Hall is like top 5 in the NFL in receptions, I think, over the past 3 weeks. Before this game where he leads the Jets with 9 receptions, I mean, we talked about it a little bit during the game, what Anthony was talking about. Like, the Jets, not only this year, there's only one game left. The Jets sit at 6-11, or 6-10, excuse me. Yeah. So moving into 2024, I know we're going to talk about what lies ahead over the course of the offseason a little bit after the Patriots game next week. But really, when you look at this Jets offense, what's missing, like, from a rhythm standpoint? I feel like has been the question all year. And obviously, I think if you're a fan, it pains you to watch the Browns, who are on their 4th quarterback on multiple tackles, similar situations. But obviously, the Browns in the playoffs in 2023, the Jets not.
Yeah. It's hard to look at bright spots tonight, but the bottom line is, if I'm a fan and I'm looking at 2024, and I see Breece Hall going out there and balling. And I envision what it's going to look like in 2024 when Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. And how about Garrett Wilson? 5 receptions tonight, 50 yards. He goes over 1,000 yards for his second consecutive season. He's got an outside shot at 100 receptions despite playing with 4 different quarterbacks. And I thought Xavier Gipson and Jason Brownlee flashed. Now, those guys aren't going to be your second option next year, but Quincy, perhaps those are guys that are going to provide very good depth for you in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of make it a little light, right? I think, AB mentioned a little bit about how, these guys had to go pound for pound, right? And I talked about it with Ethan earlier, right, in the pregame show, right? He got off to a great start with his 10 wins, 11 wins. And as I started to try to catch up, I'm trying to go pound for pound instead of playing my game. And you could tell in this game they were trying to go pound for pound with this high-powered Browns offense, and they really should just stay sound and stayed with their offense, giving it to Breece, figuring out those things, and that's kind of one of the things that helped them fail in this game.
I think you made a great point about Xavier Gipson. What I come back to is Robert Saleh talking about 2021, guys like Brandon Echols, who was a 6th-round pick, getting the reps in 2021, then becomes a valuable depth piece for the Jets a couple of years down the road. I think we're seeing that with Xavier Gipson and Jason Brownlee. We just talked about Garrett Wilson. Reaches 1,000 yards, first Jet to do it in back-to-back years, first 2 years as a New York Jet. And Caroline Hendershot caught up with Wilson after the game.
Here with wide receiver Garrett Wilson. Garrett, what was Coach's message to the team after today's loss?
We can't start how we started. When you get yourself in a hole like that against a good team, it's going to be hard to dig yourself out. We came out and battled in the second half, but like I said, we digged ourselves too deep of a hole, and it's going to be tough to recover.
On that opening drive, though, the offense looked to have a good rhythm and a good flow, getting that opening drive touchdown. What happened after that where you guys couldn't find that again?
They were a really good defense, and they made some adjustments and, made it really hard on us. They have a really good front seven. They made it really hard. I know they're really good on the back end as well. So, we just got to be more detailed. We got to finish plays. I got to finish plays. And we got to watch this film tomorrow and be really critical of ourselves so we can finish this thing the right way and then roll in the next season with some, coming off a W.
What was it about that first drive chemistry that you found that was working well for the team?
I feel like we were, taking our matchups. Breece is one of those guys that you can get the ball in his hands. Good things are going to happen. We got it on the edge a few times. I think, there wasn't a lot of safety help, so we had put up a fade early in the drive and just things like that. We were able to get down the field fast with just being efficient, taking what they were giving us, and we got to find a way to bottle that up and pull it through the whole game. It was a good start, but offensively, but it still wasn't what we wanted.
I know you might not have had time to digest it yet, but you just eclipsed 1,000 yards tonight for back-to-back seasons, becoming the 4th Jet in franchise history to do so. I know you really wanted this. What does it mean to you? I would have loved to do it in a win today. For me, it's about building a legacy and for my eventual kids to have something to look at their dad and be proud of. And I put in work my whole life to, be able to do these type of things on the biggest stage. So it's a culmination of all the people that raised me, all the people that had an effect on me, and all the coaches I've had in the past that have got me to this point, and the way that I can go out there and just play the game I love, and I'm so blessed to do so. And it's awesome to do it for this organization. Thanks for the time, G.
Appreciate you, Caroline.
If you're a Jets fan, you have to be excited about 17 is on your team. But let's head inside the film room to Quincy's Film Breakdown, powered by Microsoft Surface. EA talked about a couple bright spots, one of them being Breece Hall, Jermaine Johnson being another one. Both of those guys found the end zone, starting with Breece Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. So Breece Hall here, this is a great play call from Hackett right here. The biggest thing here that you want is to get your guy open on this side right here. So most times when you see this play, you're going to have your running back either run the slant or a go. You got your running back out against a linebacker. Excuse that mess up right there. But anyways, a linebacker out there. So he's out in space. But instead what they did is they motioned him. Now with this motion, he doesn't know what's happening, and they have a nice mesh going on with guys running outs as well outside of there. So I'm going to let it run. Great 2 picks right there, 1 pick, 2 pick. Everybody knows where they need to go, and then you just got Breece Hall in space. It's so easy, and he just glides on the field, right? They mentioned it on the broadcast. The guy just glides. You get the ball in his hands, and he's moving probably 20 miles per hour. I think they're going to tell us at the end, and he just makes it look so easy. 18 miles per hour.
Q, nice job on the crossers. Can you tell us what the instructions are there for the receivers who, like you said, they're creating interference, but you don't want to get flagged there?
Of course. So you got to make it look like you're still running your route, right? So here we have the first pick here. You got to make it look like I'm just running my route. I'm not trying to run into this guy, right? And then again, another pick here. I'm just running my route. They do a good job of just glancing because all you need is just to slow him down. Breece Hall is fast enough to run away from him, right? But you just want to mess up those angles and slow him down so that he can get to the end zone.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the guy that was trailing, he's got speed, which we saw. He ended up with 11 tackles, second on the team for the Cleveland Browns. Nice job there from Breece Hall and Nathaniel Hackett and company. And then the Jets get a score on defense, and we'll talk about this later, almost 2 scores on defense. But Jermaine Johnson, a great play, athletic play, and ends up being 6 for the Jets.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Jermaine Johnson coming on this year, making plays when his number is called. So this is a great job here, right? Because he sniffs out the screen, right? So he's the guy that's actually on Njoku in the first place, slows him up a little bit right here, right? Obviously, Njoku's trying to make it seem like, okay, I'm just blocking you. And a great job of having the awareness. Let me jump up and get in the passing lane, but then to jump again, right? So I'm going to show the other side, but look at him running away. And Njoku's not a slow guy, right? So this is a great play by him. So I'm going to show the other side. It's a great job because off that first bounce, right, it's not easy to then hit the ground and still get up to knock this ball down. So a great job to get that and then go underneath and catch the ball as well.
Yeah, and that speaks to development in year 2 because play recognition. He knows that he's getting the chip, but they're going to go to Njoku there, the veteran quarterback, Joe Flacco. And great patience with the jump, and then he comes back up, gets the PD, and then has the presence of mind to grab that ball, and it's off to the races.
And the speed, too.
Yes, exactly. It's just a great job overall, man. The guy's been showing up, and I'm happy to see that he's making plays like that.
And that's why you're excited if you're a Jet fan, because it's these second-year studs, the Jermaine Johnsons, the Breece Halls, the Garrett Wilsons of the world that continue to pop up, even in a losing season, that makes you think that promising things are on the horizon.
Absolutely. And, I just looked this up. Garrett Wilson's 23 years old. For him to talk to Caroline the way that he did, talking about building a legacy, like his mind and his play is much further along than a second-year player. Same with Breece Hall, Jermaine Johnson, and the other person we have not talked about in that class is Sauce Gardner. Obviously going to be not talked about a whole lot considering the Jets let up 37 points. But Sauce Gardner, week in and week out, seems to lock down opposing wide receivers, Caroline Hendershot caught up with another Jets defender, Quincy Williams, following tonight's game.
Here with linebacker Quincy Williams. Quincy, you guys shut out the Browns in the second half, but it was the first half that kind of got away from the defense. What do you think wasn't working in the way that you wanted in the first half?
Main thing was our fundamentals. We knew it was going to be one of those games where we would have to beat ourselves, I'm going to say that. So the main thing going in, we knew it was going to be a very run-heavy team and then come in with some play action. So good with our eyes, good with our keys and things like that. So we started off kind of slow. Of course, me being a defensive player, I'm always putting on the defense first. So we could have started off better, faster.
What was it that kind of flipped for you guys at halftime?
Just having that just conversation, be like, this is one of those games where it's just a do your job type mentality. Don't try to do too much. Be good with your eyes type thing. Then we came out, got a reset. So that was really it.
You guys still have one more on the season, finishing out, especially against an AFC East rival. What is the messaging going into that game?
It's going to be the same thing, but the main important thing with us playing 2 games in 1 week, getting our body back together. We got a lot of guys beat up, things like that. So taking these couple of days, what is like 10 days we got, taking those couple of days so we can be full speed, powerful coming in, because we're going to have another one of those same games where it's like run, play, action, boot, and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Quincy.
Thanks for having me.
Great stuff from Quincy Williams and Caroline Hendershot. As always, taking a look at the game summary here. The Browns out-yard the Jets 4-8 to 361. Third down, not the Jets' best performance on defense. The number that stands out to me the most is obviously the 50% on third down from the Cleveland Browns. And obviously, like we discussed, a big difference between the first and the second half for the New York Jets, which leads us to our report cards. And I'm very interested to see where everyone goes here. So, Anthony, let's start with you and the Jets' offense. What kind of grade are we giving the Jets here?
Yeah, there was a lot of promise, obviously, to start the game, right? But a D plus. Again, a lot of low grades really in the second half of the season. And that's unfortunate. You wanted to see some growth from the offense. You wanted to see something click. You look at the Browns as a perfect example. How are they functioning, right, with a fourth quarterback? How are they functioning with 10, 12 different line changes as well? It's something to look and watch and really study, when you're talking about what the Jets could have done differently. And really it comes down to after the pick six, the defense had their struggles, but the offense could have helped. This is a game where the offense needed to help the defense a little bit, right? Yeah. And they went punt, 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 and then that field goal at the end. And by that time, guys, it was already too far into the bucket. And we talked about the penalties and really just not able to be as explosive, quite frankly, as their offense was.
Quincy, what about you?
Yeah, so I had to go this way because I think it started off so strong, and I was going to go D. But then once I looked at the rest of the game, right, I think even just sitting in the room watching the game, I felt very frustrated watching the game because it just was no success on the offensive side after that touchdown. And so I felt good about that touchdown, but there was nothing else to show me like, okay, there was some improvement, right? There was no improvement. There was a lot of penalties, a lot of just mistakes all over the field, right? Missed blocks. And so I just couldn't give these guys anything higher than that. I think, if you look in the mirror and say that you deserve something higher, I think, you have to understand that, that's not Jets football, right? That's not what you should say is your standard of football.
All right. Coach Becht and Quincy, ultimate team guys. I'm looking at some individual performances, so that's why I'm raising the grade here. I thought Breece again was outstanding. Garrett chipping in. I liked what we got out of Xavier Gibson and Brownlee. I know they're not getting monster numbers, but we also saw Israel Abanikanda getting some touches and things like that. And they moved the football. Again, 13 points is not good enough. Bottom line, that's what the Jets offense scored tonight. They scored 13 points, and Beck's right. They had to help out the defense more, and they didn't. With that being said, that's the first time this season the Jets have scored a touchdown on their first drive. So they gave the defense a boost there, but then, of course, that was a crusher in terms of the interception that went the other way as well.
Right, and both teams scored on defense, so now let's move to the defensive grades. We'll go same order, Anthony, Quincy, and then EA. The Jets did do some nice things, couple takeaways. Could have been one more, depending on what you thought of the call that was overturned on the Jerome Ford fumble. But at the end of the day, 30 points let up, most of that in the first half. Anthony, you gave the Jets, again, a D+.
Yeah, they had a chance to match the other great defense in the NFL. They talked about they wanted to be the best defense in the NFL. And they had a chance to go toe-to-toe and shut down a four-string quarterback who, I get it, he's got credentials. But let's be honest, guys. I mean, to throw for 300 yards and a half, 34 points and a half, I don't care how many points, who scored what or how they got it. There were some flash plays. And if we're going to give pluses and minuses for those things, that's great. But when we're talking about the totality of the game and what it took to go on the road on a short week, the defense, again, had to play semi-decent. They didn't have to be great. And unfortunately, early in this football game, they never had a chance the way it unraveled. And, of course, the offense didn't help them much. But, man, it really sure felt like the Browns were in control of this thing from the get-go. And they came out with a purpose. And the Jets defense knew it. The Jets defense knew what was on the field on their side. You want to match it, see how you play, and they weren't able to live up to it in this game.
Yeah, for me, it was famine or feast, not feast or famine. And the Jets, it was famine early. But what I was encouraged about was the 3 takeaways. And, oh, by the way, it should have been 4 takeaways because Jordan Whitehead's rip of the Browns running back there strong in the second half. I have no idea how officials overturned that call. Right. Should have been 4 takeaways.
Which was an incredible play.
And also, Jermaine Johnson got into the end zone, so I factored that into the equation as well. when I'm grading the defense. But again, not good enough in the first half. They didn't have any answers. And Robert Saleh pointed to technique issues there early for the Jets coming off the short week. And Saleh, in fact, guys, pointed to himself and said, hey, maybe I have to do something differently as far as the planning is concerned, getting these guys ready for a Thursday night game.
Yeah, I think it was a tale of two halves, right? I would say the first half was probably FD, and then I would say the second half was definitely A. So, you average out, that's a C. And the reason why I say that really is because, I thought it did a really good job shutting down this offense, right? And you're talking about an offense that's really high-powered. Obviously, they put up a lot of points and a lot of yards in that first half, but those guys really kind of came out and shut it down, and that's what I'm proud of, right? Those guys really showed up, and that's the championship-level defense, right? I mean, if you do stuff like that, you expect your offense to then score on the opposite side, right? Okay, we'll stop these guys, right? We messed up in the beginning, but now we're going to stop them. You need to go do something, and so that's why I couldn't give the offense a better grade than an F, because you didn't show up for your defense, who really showed up in that second half.
AB, for me, the most disappointing thing was Amari Cooper, the Browns' top offensive weapon, wasn't in the lineup, just like the Miami game when Tyreek Hill was not in the lineup, and we saw another guy pick it up for the opposition. Against the Dolphins, it was Jalen Waddle. Today, it was Njoku. And Elijah Moore, hopefully he's okay, because that looked really dangerous as far as that hit in the second quarter when his head hits the turf. So blessings to him. But he really got going in the first half as well, AB.
Yeah, I mean, guys, you play half the game, that's not good enough, right? That's just bottom line. I mean, you got to play 4 quarters. You can have some ups and downs, but, to really just not give much of it. There were a lot of missed tackles in the first half, and they did come out with a purpose in the second half. That's because, they probably got chewed out and, quite frankly, just didn't really show out in the beginning of the game. You got to, if anything, when great defenses, no matter what, they're going to get scored on and things of that nature. The one thing you got to count on with our defense is that they have to come out the gates and just set the tone. And they didn't set it today for whatever reason. Maybe it was a shocking deal. Maybe they didn't think the tight end was going to be the piece that was going to get it. But man, Joe, plenty of, Joe's not a guy that can run around. I mean, pressures, whatever it may be, didn't work, and they didn't get it done. And when a half goes by and your defense doesn't do anything, what's going to happen in the second? It's over, right? Because it's just there's no shot for this offense to really have a chance.
Yeah, Robert Saleh said post-game that one of the things that he's going to look inward for is how the Jets have performed on Thursday Night Football in his tenure. 2021 to present, the Jets have lost all 3. In 2021, the Jets lost in Indianapolis. All 3 losses have come by 15 or more points for the Green and White on Thursday Night Football over the past 3 seasons. And on defense, I mean, the Jets only allowed 59 net yards in the second half. And then let's wrap up the report cards with special teams. EA, let's start with you. Greg Zuerlein originally during the week, quad soreness, he ends up going. But what did you think about the way that whole team or that whole unit played tonight?
Well, you got to go back to in the first half, the Jets were able to escape disaster, but Israel Abanikanda putting the ball on the ground. I like what Izzy did offensively, but you can't turn the ball over in your territory when you're taking that ball out. Yeah. Also, at the beginning of the second half, I believe the Jets could have closed the deficit to 14 points, but Zuerlein unfortunately hit a divot in the field, and that was a chip shot. And unfortunately, a guy who's been magnificent this year goes down with a miss. So I give it a C overall, an average effort.
Yeah, that was that. Yep. B minus. I'm not. Yeah. So I'm gonna keep it up there, right? My face is on the grade. But yeah, just overall, obviously not the best showing for this special teams. You also had the punt that rolled in, right? So what's that? The Gunners didn't get down; they got blocked. So there was actually a few different things. The totality of the game. Obviously, some things missed me, but yeah, tough game for this team.
Anthony, you're going D pluses all across the board, huh? Keeping it consistent.
Listen, he can't turn the ball over, man. I mean, that's just so brutal. I mean, you're watching a game in the beginning, and you're like, wow, like both offenses are on. Yep. This is going to be exciting. Okay, Browns score, you're going to get the ball back, and then you fumble. I mean, got to find a way to maybe get Xavier Gibson that maybe have that catch versus Izzy. Izzy, you're right, did some good things offensively, but man, let's not force the issue because he's a fast player. He doesn't have a lot of that experience throughout the season. That's a tough deal. The environment was loud. It seemed like a really, ruckus day just as far as fan base is concerned. They had the block kick, however it was, kick low, divot, whatever it may be. Either way, it was a blocked kick. Can't have block kicks. I mean, that's what, and I believe there was a punt. We could have had one right at the 1, and I believe it just trickled into the end zone. I get it; it happens, but I felt like the guy was our player was in position to make that stop, and there's technique things there, which Coach Sal talked about defensive techniques. There's techniques in special teams as well to control yourself, hit the ball, and make sure your body doesn't go in. Just don't go out of control, even though you're trying to hustle to it to stop it. So again. Am I nitpicking there? Probably, but you can't turn the ball over. It really was a monster, change. They didn't. I don't believe they scored there, right? Did they score after that?
They didn't. But then the Jets offense took over, and Simeon got picked.
Exactly, and that's what happened. And then the pick six came when they stopped them on defense. So again, one thing kind of turns the next, but it deflates you a little bit, especially when that game. Honestly, I was kind of like really enjoyed how well the offense was moving in that first period. Yeah. I'm like, man, something's here. They got something, and then bam, it's like it gets all of a sudden it changes everything, and not because of the fumble, but just again you're feeling like you're catching up, and again not having the explosiveness of the offense the entire season, not finding a way to generate points, a la the Browns this year, the way they have done, and I got to give them credit. I mean, Flacco, Stefanski, the way they've come up with ways to beat football teams, not have your best player on the football field as well. Listen, that's a tough deal, man. That probably hurts you most as a defensive head coach, a defensive coordinator, to watch that and you just didn't expect that was going to happen to you because that's what you've been stopping for the whole season. And that's just something. Joe went out there and made plays, man, and that's what this game's about. And he's done it a lot longer than a lot of the players on that field on both teams.
The irony in the Izzy Abanikanda fumble is that Saleh didn't talk about it post-game, but you would imagine the reason why he was back there as opposed to Xavier Gibson is because just a couple weeks ago, Xavier Gibson was the one that coughed up the rock. In that same situation, the Jets go back to Xavier Gibson after Abanikanda loses the ball. Gibson actually did a pretty nice job returning kicks the rest of the game. He had 3 for 82 yards, averaged 27.3 with a long of 34.
Sometimes young players are going to give you gray hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the what is Coach Saleh? He uses a metaphor when talking about the young players. I can't recall it right now, maybe because it's 12:27 in the morning. But he knows that it's a roller coaster with young players, with rookies, especially guys who don't get a ton of game action. Izzy had been inactive for the first 9 games of the season before slowly incorporating into the Jets lineup here. As we wrap up on Jets overtime, final score 37-20 in Cleveland. I just want to get each of your final thoughts. Anthony, we'll start with you since you're in Memphis and we know that it's a little bit past your bedtime. Just overall in this game, obviously there's one game left in the 2023 regular season schedule here. I don't want to ask where the Jets go from here because they're out of playoff contention, but what do you hope to see between now and when they take the field against the New England Patriots in Foxborough?
Yeah, I'm trying to twist into my thoughts and also a coach's perspective when you come off a loss like that. Number one, they have 10 days, okay? There's a lot of days to really kind of chew on the loss a little bit, kind of get your body right and get on a normal schedule next week. So there's no excuse not to have a plan and the urgency and the want to finish the season strong. The record is not where this team wants to be, no question about it. But to play a Thursday night game the way they did completely as a football team, you've got to be able to bounce back and find a way. And, that's going to be big on the coaches this week, how they keep the practices fresh, how they keep it enjoyable and fun, but yet keeping it critical, holding guys accountable, and making sure they get the most out of their guys. Izzy was a guy that fumbled in special teams, but you mentioned These guys have to play and find ways to contribute to this football team. So when 2024 comes around, you can learn who you can count on in these scenarios, in these situations. So again, a lot of those players are going to get chances in this last game. And quite frankly, going against the Patriots, who's having a bad year, they have a worse record than the Jets. You really got to find a way to keep it competitive and win the game. So go out there and blow for blow, play 4 quarters of football. That's all we're asking. Can't be 2 quarters, can't be 3, 3.5. It's got to be 4 quarters, and then you let the chips fall as they may. As long as they're fighting in that game through 4 quarters, it's going to be a tough game. It's not a pushover game. Patriots are a really good defense. It will be a challenge. So going into this week, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to get back on track. That's how I'll gauge how this team kind of finishes the season as they go through this long week to get their body right, their mind right, and go out and play one more game to finish the year.
Anthony, thanks for joining us as always. Go get some sleep, enjoy the Ducks in the hotel, and good luck tomorrow.
You got
Good
it,
luck,
guys.
brother.
Thanks for sticking.
Good luck.
All right, guys, let's wrap up Jets overtime here in Florham Park. And just going off of what we just talked about, I'm interested to see what happens with Zach Wilson in the concussion protocol. Will he clear the protocol in order to play against New England Patriots, who he's had an not a great track record against, but also the Jets haven't had a great track record against the Patriots since 2016. But overall, EA, when you take a look at tonight and you kind of factor in what remains in the 2023 season, like where does your mind go?
I want the Jets to play a clean football game and finish what they started against the New England Patriots. You mentioned back to 2016. The streak is at what right now? 15 consecutive games, is that correct?
Yeah.
The Patriots have owned the Jets of recent times. We all know that. An arch nemesis. Now, totally different landscape. With that being said, here's a time to start a new streak and head into 2024 on a high note. I will say this about tonight's game. I don't think most teams in the National Football League would have won in that situation. Cleveland had everything on the line, a postseason berth at stake. That environment was a postseason environment, and they came out firing on all cylinders in front of their home crowd. With that being said, the Jets just got to play a clean brand of football to finish the year out. That means don't turn the ball over, don't commit silly penalties, and play with better technique. AB mentioned that you have 10 days to prepare for the Patriots. This is a divisional ball game. We know the Jets have very good pieces in place. And oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers is coming back in 2024. But it's going to be interesting what happens at the quarterback position in the very near term. Because like you mentioned, Greens, is it going to be Zach Wilson who ends the season here at quarterback, Hugh?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's something that remains to be seen. We will find out. I think the biggest thing about this last game is you want to see who you have on this team who's a young guy that's really going to contribute in the future. Right? And that's what the last game is all about. You see a lot of the veterans, especially when you're not making it to the playoffs anymore, they tend to be sat, maybe go on IR. You see who's in the what young guys can really step up and perform next year, because those are the guys that are really going to be your foundational pieces. We know about Jermaine Johnson. We know about Breece Hall. We know about Garrett Wilson. But who else is going to step up? Who wants to really take this team to the next level next year? Those are the guys that need to show up this week. And obviously you want to win against the Patriots so you can kind of change the narrative going into next year.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you just said. Not only do you want to kind of flip the script there, but if you think about the beginning of the season, so much was predicated on hope. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, all that was sucked out of the sail, or the wind was sucked out of the sail 4 snaps into the season. So in order for me to close the season strong on a high note, to do it in Foxborough against a team that you haven't beaten since 2016, it would set the course and set the tone into the offseason. And I understand fans who, at this point, all you want to see is a better draft order or a better position in the draft. I get that. But these players, they're not just going to quit in Week 18. To Quincy's point, if you're a young player, this is your opportunity. You're going to try to make a claim for your roster spot in the offseason, into next season. And for the Jets, going off into the 2024 season, on a win against a team like we just said, haven't beaten since 2016. It's poetic. It set the tone for the rest of the offseason. That's all we have here on Jets Overtime, presented by SiriusXM. 37-20 final score. Jets-Browns in Cleveland. We'll be right back in studio next week when the Jets take on the Patriots for the first game in the calendar year of 2024.